You need to hear what these three found before you ever set foot near Maggie Valley again. Because what they walked into that morning in the Smoky Mountains is still up there. In June of 2014, on the eastern ridge of the Great Smoky Mountains in Haywood County, North Carolina, three urban explorers drove up Highway 19 toward a shuttered amusement park sitting at 4,600 feet. Ghost Town in the Sky had been closed since 2002. 12 years of litigation, trespassing citations, and county patrol sweeps keeping most people off the mountain. These three were not most people. They never even made it to the fence. On the way back to their car, after one look at the cameras and the patrol lights and the decision to abort, one of them heard something. A 4-note jingle coming out of the woods. Off every trail, off every map. They followed it a quarter mile into the tree line and found something that should not exist. 12 arcade cabinets running on no power source in a concrete building that appeared on no survey, no deed, no county record going back to 1961. By the end of that night, the Haywood County Sheriff's Office had opened a missing person file. One member of that crew was never found. The building was never found. The footage was never uploaded. Only 2 of them reached the road. One still lives in Brevard. He doesn't make videos anymore. What you are about to hear is his account. His name is Calder Marsh, and this happened to him in June of 2014. It is a Tuesday morning, and Calder Marsh has been planning this shoot for 6 weeks. Ghost Town in the Sky. An abandoned amusement park sitting at 4,600 feet on the ridge above Maggie Valley, closed since 2002. Ownership locked in a 3-party litigation dispute that had been grinding through Haywood County courts for over a decade. The rides were still up there. The old Western-themed Midway was still standing. 12 years of weather and neglect, and the mountain just taking it back, inch by inch, while lawyers argued about who had the right to do anything about it. Calder had the thumbnail written in his head before he left the driveway. We broke into an abandoned amusement park at 4,600 feet. 12 videos in. He knew the rhythm. Sable Arden rode in the back seat with her phone and her research, the way she always did, reading the litigation history, the county records, the timeline, out loud in the precise and unhurried way she delivered information. Active legal dispute since 2009. Haywood County Sheriff's Office authorized to run patrol sweeps following a scaffolding incident the previous week. Teenagers, Upper Park, the old Wild West show stage partially gave way, 2 of them bad enough for air transport out of the valley. Cameras added to the access trail below the chairlift terminal. Sweep schedule moved up. Private security consultation reportedly ongoing. Rhett Colvin rode shotgun and said nothing. He ate a gas station biscuit and watched the mountain come up through the windshield. Rhett never said anything until it mattered. Calder had learned over 2 years that Rhett's silences were not agreement. They were patience. The mountain was green and completely misted, the kind of June overcast that settled into the higher ridges overnight and didn't burn off until mid-morning. The valley below was already warming. Up at 4,600 feet, it would still be cold. Calder had committed to the story. He hadn't yet considered what the mountain might do with that. They reached the fence line on foot 40 minutes before sunrise, single file, Sable leading because Sable always led when navigation mattered. The mountain was cold the way the Smokies are cold at elevation before the sun clears the ridge. Not winter cold, but the particular damp chill of June nights that hadn't finished yet. Wet pine and clay runoff came off the slope in waves. Calder had the GoPro running low, no narration, just capturing the approach. Through the trees above them, the old chairlift terminal was barely visible against the lighter dark. Rusted cable, Collapsed loading platform, the silhouette of it almost gone. Sable stopped and pointed without speaking. A camera mount on a bracket above the access trail, angled to cover the full fence approach. County issue. She had noted it as a possibility. Seeing it confirmed was different from reading about it. Rhett touched Calder's shoulder and tilted his head toward the service road. Headlights, moving in a slow, deliberate loop. Not a random pass, a dedicated route with timing. The headlights moved at the pace of a vehicle looking for something specific. Sable found the second camera 12 feet further east, mounted on a tree, covering the gap between the fence and the tree line. Overlapping fields. Anyone approaching from any angle would be on at least one of them. Calder did the calculation honestly for the first time in 6 weeks of planning. 2 cameras. Active patrol ahead of schedule. A county that had just airlifted teenagers off this property. He killed the GoPro. Told the others they were done. They turned back toward the car. That was when he heard it. 4 notes. Bright and synthetic, slightly degraded the way old speakers get when the cone has aged and the wire has oxidized. Cycling on a short repeat. 4 notes, half-second gap. 4 notes again, coming from the tree line to the east. Not from the trail. Not from the service road. Not from any direction that had anything on Sable's maps. He stopped, checked his phone. It wasn't that. Sable had already gone still, head tilted at the angle she used when something didn't fit the data she had. Not frightened. Reading. Rhett stood slightly apart, hands loose at his sides, looking east into the trees. His stillness was different from Sable's, not analytical, alert. The jingle cycled again. 4 notes, gap, 4 notes. The mist bending it toward them through the wet undergrowth. None of them discussed it. They turned east and walked toward it into the undergrowth off the trail, and the sound stayed the same distance ahead for the first 100 yards, unhurried, cycling without variation. And then it stopped. Sable nearly walked into the wall. Low concrete block construction set back into the slope, half consumed by vegetation, moss covering the entire north face, a birch growing so close against the south corner that the bark had worn a groove into the concrete. The building was old, not park-era old. Older. It sat in the woods with the settled quality of something that had been in one place for a very long time. A steel door on the east face, propped open by a length of rebar. Darkness inside. The jingle came from in there now, faint, the speaker working hard. Inside, 12 arcade cabinets in 2 rows, every screen cycling through a track demos, every machine lit and warm to the touch and running, no generator, no extension cables, no conduit, no power source anywhere, no hum of a transformer, no diesel smell, nothing. Just 12 machines running in a sealed concrete room in the middle of the Smoky Mountains, with no explanation for why they had power. Sable moved along the far wall, reading serial plates in the attract screen light. She read 3 of them before she spoke, her voice quiet with the particular care she used when stating something she could not yet explain. This building did not appear on any property survey of this land going back to 1961, not on any map she had pulled, not on any record she had found. Calder noticed the GoPro was running. He did not remember turning it back on. For a few minutes it is almost fun. That is the part Calder will return to later. Those 3 or 4 minutes of genuine excitement before Rhett speaks. The machines running on no power source in a building on no map, and all 3 of them moving through it with the loose energy of people who have found something they cannot explain and have not yet understood what that means. Calder panned the GoPro slowly down the cabinet row, already thinking about the thumbnail, already hearing the narration in his head. Rhett found a Pac-Man cabinet halfway down the left row with the coin slot still exposed and put a quarter in just to see. The screen refreshed. The game loaded. The full start tone filled the room, bright and complete. And Rhett actually laughed. Quiet and surprised. The laugh of a man who didn't expect it to work. Sable was not laughing. She had been moving along the far wall since they came in, running her palm flat against the concrete between cabinets, pressing her fingertips along the edges of the machines. She had not spoken since her observation about the surveys. Calder noticed and did not interrupt. Sable's silences were productive. He had learned that. He was on the third cabinet from the end, a centipede unit, screen bright, when Rhett said it. "There's somebody back there." Calder swung the GoPro toward the rear of the room. Two figures. One seated against the back wall, knees drawn up, head hanging forward, face not visible. One standing beside the last cabinet in the right-hand row, the Galaga unit still cycling, with one hand resting on the side panel. Not gripping it, just resting. The way a person rests a hand on something while waiting for something they are not in a hurry for. Both completely still. In the attract screen light, they looked like men who had been living rough a long time, worn down, thin, dressed in mismatched layers that made no sense for June at any elevation. Calder's first instinct was guilt. The specific discomfort of having walked into someone's shelter with a camera running. He lowered the GoPro slightly. "Hey," he said. "Sorry, we didn't know anyone was in here." Neither figure responded. Neither moved. Sable had already stopped moving. She stood across the room watching them, hands at her sides. Calder tried again. Louder, pitched friendly. The tone you use when you need someone to understand quickly that you are not a threat. The seated figure turned its head toward the sound, not toward his face, toward the sound. The way something turns when it has registered noise but not located meaning in it. The head tilted a degree past where it should have stopped and held there, and something in Calder's understanding shifted without him being able to name what. The words had arrived. They had carried no information. Then he looked at the standing figure's eyes, not at his face, at his feet, tracking which foot carried more weight, which direction he was angled, where he might move. The standing figure was not thin the way a man living rough is thin. Enormous. 6.5 feet, wide across the chest and shoulders, head nearly brushing the cabinet beside him, but his head hung low between his shoulder blades, and his arms swung loose with the specific looseness of something not relaxed, but conserving. The stillness coming off him was not exhaustion, not patience in any human sense. It was the stillness of something that had learned to wait in a dark room and had been doing it long enough that waiting had become its natural state. Sable crossed the room in 4 fast, quiet steps and put her mouth close to his ear. "Those are not squatters," she said. "Don't make any sudden movements. Find the door." The small figure was no longer seated. Calder did not see it move. One moment it was against the wall, knees up, head down. The next the space was just dark and empty, and somewhere behind them, something small had moved to a position none of them could identify. Rhett had already found the door. They moved for the exit, measured, deliberate, not running yet. All three had arrived at the same instinct without speaking it. That running was the thing that ended whatever negotiation was still theoretically possible. Rhett reached the door first and pushed. The rebar scraped across the dirt floor. The door swung wide and the dark outside looked like safety, and Calder was 3 steps behind Rhett and closing. Sable was 3 steps behind Calder, watching, not panicking, working. The Galaga cabinet cut. Power died or the machine crashed. The jingle stopped mid-note, the screen went black, and the light dropped. What had been near dark became something closer to total dark. The only light now, the Pac-Man cabinet still running on Rhett's quarter, and the cold blue glow of 2 attract screens at the far end. And in that change of light, the sound changed too. What filled the room in the jingle's absence was silence, and then breathing. Slow, synchronized. In through the nose, out through the mouth, 2 people breathing at the exact same rate with the regularity of something practiced over a very long time in a very dark place. Not unconscious rhythm, deliberate like something that had learned to coordinate. The large figure began to walk, not fast, 1 foot in front of the other, crossing the dirt floor at the pace of something that had never needed to hurry. Because hurrying implied a thing might get away, and this thing had no experience of things getting away. Closing the distance to Sable with a patience that was worse than aggression. Aggression could be read, could be anticipated. This had no signal of intent. Just the steady crossing of a room by something doing the only thing it had done for a very long time. Arms swung loose, head hung low between his shoulders. He was not looking at Sable. He was looking at the door. Calder was almost through it when Sable's hand came up, not reaching for him, not asking for help, pointing. And he turned the GoPro in time to catch it. The small figure was already there. Crouched behind Sable's left shoulder, chin nearly level with her ear, having crossed the room a second time without sound and gone completely still in the 2 seconds no one had been watching that corner. Eyes wide open, unblinking, looking directly into the lens with the specific, unmistakable recognition of something that understood what a camera was, what footage was, and understood that the footage was about to be the only thing that got out of this room. It knew the difference between a thing that stayed and a thing that left. Rhett shouted. The small figure moved, fast and low, covering the distance in under 2 seconds, hitting Calder in the chest and shoulder before his eyes had registered it was in motion. Not a tackle, not a grab, more like something thrown at full speed with no concern for its own impact. Calder went down hard. 1 knee and both palms on the dirt floor, cold and packed and smelling of machine oil, and something underneath it he still cannot name, the GoPro skidding sideways out of his grip. The figure was on him for half a second, less, and in that half second Calder saw its face clearly in the blue light from the Pac-Man cabinet. Saw the eyes. Saw a mouth pulled wide and thin into something that lived between recognition and hunger, with no clear boundary between the two. Then Rhett got a hand on it, and it twisted free like it had no bones. Nothing to grip, a shape moving through Rhett's fist like water, and ran. Straight through the open door and into the June dark, fast and low and gone before either of them processed it was moving. The sound came back from the trees immediately. 4 notes, high and broken, more air than voice, coming from the east, then further east, moving through dense undergrowth at a speed that had no explanation. Rhett hauled Calder up, and they went through the door together. The large figure was still walking when it swung shut behind them, still crossing the room at the same unhurried pace. The last thing the GoPro recorded before it came to rest on the dirt floor was his face. Not angry, not urgent, just patient. Arranged into the blank and settled patience of something doing the only thing it had done for a very long time, in a room with no windows and no deed and no record, with machines running on nothing, in a building that did not exist on any map anyone had ever drawn. Sable did not come through the door. Calder and Rhett reached Highway 19 before 5 a.m. The Haywood County Sheriff's Office took their statement at the fence line. 2 deputies, professional and thorough. Rhett did the talking. Trespassing on private property, They acknowledge that without being asked. Lost hiker, last seen in the tree line east of the access trail, separated in the dark. He kept the rest of it out of the statement because he had seen what happens to accounts like the real one. The deputies were already building a search grid off the access trail. They were looking in the right general direction. They were looking in the wrong specific place, because the grid assumed a person who went missing in these woods went missing the way people go missing in these woods. And that assumption was wrong in ways no one in Haywood County had a framework for. No concrete building was found. No arcade cabinets. No power source. No footprints in the undergrowth that didn't belong to Calder and Rhett. The search ran 3 passes over 4 days and found nothing. The property dispute over Ghost Town meant no single authority had full jurisdiction, and the deputies were working from maps that didn't show what Sable's maps didn't show. Sable Arden was entered as a missing person on the morning of June 17, 2014. Missing persons don't make the news when they disappear from private property they had no legal right to be on. The Haywood County filing is public record. There is nothing else attached to it. 18 months later, the Ghost Town litigation was quietly resolved. The company that won the property made no statement about intended use. They kept it closed and continued running the patrol sweeps, and no one asked why, because the scaffolding incident had given everyone a reason that was easier to accept. Calder never uploaded the footage. He watched it once, alone in his apartment in Brevard, 3 weeks after it happened. Once all the way through with the volume low, and then the last 4 seconds again. Just those 4. Sable's hand raised and pointing. The blue light from the Pac-Man cabinet catching the back of the small figure's head as it crossed toward her. And the small figure's eyes, looking directly into the lens with the recognition of something that understood what a camera was and understood that the footage was going to be the only thing that left that room. She was still pointing. Right up until the frame went dark, she was still trying to make him see what she was seeing, still working the problem, right up until the last possible moment. He has theories. He doesn't share them, because sharing them would require watching the footage again, and he is not going to watch the footage again. He still lives in Brevard, works at the kayak outfitter on Main Street, 26 miles from Maggie Valley, close enough that on clear days the ridge above Ghost Town is visible from the highway. He watches it the way you watch a place you almost didn't leave, with the quiet attention of someone who has accepted that whatever is in that building is not gone, has not moved on, is not waiting for anything specific. It is simply there. The way a machine left running in a sealed room is still running when you walk away from it. The mountain is still there. The sweeps still run. The girl was never found. In these mountains, what you hear is not always what called you.